I, yeah, I think when we're both here, I'm always happy to unmute on your cue.
Okay.
Yeah,
that
and I
sounds
don't
fine.
think you plan on sharing anything.
No, because I give you slides.
Yeah.
Okay.
Justin, do you also have the agenda available? Okay, so let me let this room in. Oh shoot, the room's not popping up.
Recording in progress.
I'm muted,
Working.
but we can hear ourselves.
Are you the only one in the meeting?
You're
Barbara, can you hear us? Please start.
It's interesting to watch it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Hello. Hi.
How's it going?
Yeah, come on in.
Come on in. I'm the photographer for the Point in Yards.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, I was scheduled to do a quick shot for you guys.
Great. Sure. Amazing.
Are we still waiting on numbers?
Probably. We start at 6:30 and people are usually very, very punctual.
Okay, how do you think? Wait a little bit longer or?
If you have time.
Yeah, I'm here for about 10 minutes.
Okay. We also have folks who join online. But we'll see.
Very good.
Glad you found it okay.
Yeah, I was very confused. But thank you.
Now we know.
Okay, so I'm so glad to join to share.
Just so I'm not disrupting the meeting, right before you actually get on with it, to let me know if it's a good time for a quick shot.
Okay, sounds good. Are you all okay with being in a photo for Pointing Yards? Great, it's an advertisement shot.
Yeah, this is for the social media, Point in Yards.
Everybody okay? I think probably now is actually a good time before we start the online meeting in earnest.
I don't think it is. Just came off my feet, so.
Angles. DCR for the intersection between Nancy Road and Silver's Field. Me too. Over because that terrible.
Yeah.
But they're still there.
They could do like
But so they're doing that because I thought that was going to lead into the, like, these things look like they hold out project.
oh yeah.
It's far enough away that that's easy.
Okay.
So they.
Hey, Chris. You can hear us okay?
Yeah.
Yep, I can hear.
And if you don't have one lasher, could I just have everybody Next to the screen, is that okay?
Yeah.
Sure.
Everybody online, we're posing for a photo, so bear with us for a second.
Sorry to disrupt.
Should all go on one side.
I didn't think about like leg.
Yeah, well, I mean, on one side, I should be fine. Go myself here real quick.
Just Photoshop us in afterwards.
Exactly.
I love it. There you go. Yeah, I'll put this together. Smiles. All right, we're all set. Thank you very much.
So does more people use the room?
How many guests do we have?
None of this.
Great. Let's get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our April meeting of the Pedestrian Transit Advisory Committee. We are in a new space, or in the case of those of you online, probably the space you've been in for many years, where you've lived. Who is taking minutes tonight?
That's me.
Thank you, Christopher. So let's do a little roll call. Ted Alexander. I don't hear Ted. Ginny Alverson. Ginny. Caroline Bodiger. Meredith Brown. Laura Evans.
Here.
Christopher Ferry.
Here?
Preston Vitellius.
Here.
Stoko Harai. Here. Brenda Marvin.
Here.
Steve Mulder.
Here.
Barbara Myers.
Here.
Bianca Norkunis is not.
Oh, that's Ted.
Oh, great. Ted, do you want to announce yourself?
Oh, he's
Oh, no, never mind. Ted is coming inside currently. Hold on one second, guys, online. Hi, Ted. Welcome. Vitor Pamplona.
Here.
Zach Rosenberg cannot be here tonight. Alessandra Sider, I'm here. Rob Stanzel. And Carol Jarvis. Great. Ex officio, the esteemed Willenbaugh is not here. Kate White. Here. And Justin Schreiber.
Here.
And Kate, do we still have, are we still guest free?
We are just saying, yeah.
Great.
This is having a mini gallery view.
Oh, that's a good idea.
But I'd like to play around.
We have to approve, 2 sets of minutes tonight, both for February and March. Does anybody have any changes or objections to either of those minutes? Seeing none, I motion to approve both of the minutes. Do I have a second?
I'll second this.
Ted? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Great, thank you. Just some quick administrative updates. We are continuing some efforts around enforcement, or engagement on enforcement, I should say. We're having a small group meeting with Sergeant McCary, who manages the municipal road safety grant for the Somerville Police Department. That's happening on April 24th. We'll be discussing the next round of application for that grant, so FY26, but he also wants some feedback on where to deploy the pedestrian funding resources for this year. There's a advocacy, or there's a campaign coming up in May, and then other ones I think in September and November, if I remember correctly. So he wants our input on where to focus. Those of you who replied to the doodle poll, and then I think one other person, are very welcome to come. If you did not reply to the doodle poll and you are not that one other person, you know who you are, but you still like to join, please just let me know before you join the meeting so we don't go over quorum unintentionally. We are also planning to have the MBTA join us at a hopefully meeting in the not so distant future to talk about automated bus lane enforcement now that it's legal at the state level. So you can look forward to that in the upcoming months. And then one thing that the officers were wondering about is, we're just thinking about Meredith's suggestion to not kind of set aside the differences of opinion on the committee around enforcement, because we have a wide array of opinions on the committee. And we were thinking about, like, would an informal conversation be like a more, conducive space to kind of talk about those differences? So not necessarily like in a committee meeting, maybe, we go out like for drinks or something and have just like the intention in the back of our heads to talk about enforcement. Is that something that people would like, or is that not something that people would like? And maybe we think about, some other venue to discuss our difference of opinion on enforcement. Anybody have opinions, thoughts?
I would look forward to meeting people in this group informally to chat about enforcement and other topics as well. I think it would be fun.
Great. Does anybody feel similarly to Brenda, or hates that idea?
I like the idea, this is Ted. We also have that quorum issue.
Yes. I believe in speaking with mobility, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, we would be okay to have a social gathering where the intent is to talk about something related, but not necessarily in like an actionable way.
Got it.
Is that an accurate representation?
That's correct. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Cool. I'll send around a little doodle. Probably for some time in like the nice weather, because we have a lot of stuff coming up, and also it's nice to sit outside. All right, moving on to subcommittee updates. Special projects is on hold. Design review, you guys didn't meet, did you?
We did not.
Community events. Would anybody else like to summarize our meeting so I'm not talking the whole time?
Go ahead,
So we've met to talk through the plans for the walk, different roles and the routes that we'll be taking. Also looking forward, discussing plans for participation in Carnival. I don't know if there's much else, but that is mostly the Union Square planning.
Yeah. We also talked about Bay State Bike Month kickoff,
On the 4th.
which we tabled at last year and were invited to do so again this year. Bay State Bike Month kickoff, for those who don't know. May is Bay State Bike Month, and the organizers have been kind enough to expand the scope to all forms of multimodal transportation in recognition that we are all in this effort together. So I think Preston and I are gonna be there. If you're interested in tabling with us, please let me know. I'll also be giving a workshop there on how to host a walk audit, because we are doing so. So if you would like to co-host such a workshop, please let me know. I think it'll be a fun time. And yes, it's on May 4th at Aeronaut.
Where is that?
Aeronaut Brewery.
Okay, thank you.
It's from 1 to 4, if that's helpful.
And just to emphasize, the walk audit is happening on April 29th, so please, it'd be great to have everyone there, for everyone who wants to come. We have very detailed plans, and we'll be breaking into groups and walking around Union Square and taking notes on stuff that are issues that we see.
Question about that. If you have to move it to the rain date, how are you gonna let people know? And then also, like, when would you make a call?
Yeah, we collected, 50 RSVPs or something, so that's part of it.
Yeah, we have registration set up on Eventbrite.
Yeah.
But then we also have, we've been lucky enough to work with a number of other organizations. So pinging them and saying, can you put out the call to your members that this is being rescheduled?
Okay.
And when would we make the call? That's a good question. Probably the
24 hours before.
yeah.
Okay.
I sometimes recommend 48 hours, sorry to butt in.
Okay, great.
But I know it's also a Sunday, but if you happen to make, like, kind of say, hey, this is when we'll, this is our like time, we'll definitely make the call. We sometimes found 24 hours, it's very quick to,
Yeah.
and so once you do know, right, we can also support and help and promote, like leave it on the city calendar so we can make sure it's clear, it says canceled or rescheduled to the other date. They'll most likely ask us why an event get hosted, so it's also, we're happy to help kind of share and answer those questions.
Awesome, that's super helpful.
Yeah.
So yeah, if we know Sunday night, and then they could be processed Monday morning by everyone who would have to clear it out there.
Any other questions or suggestions? Alrighty, let's move on to our first really meaty agenda item, which is digging into the latest McGrath Boulevard designs. So just a brief preamble before I kick it to Justin. The Mass DOT project team for McGrath Boulevard held their latest public meeting on March 25th. This is the first, it's the first public meeting since the last public meeting in February 2024. And they presented some updated designs from that meeting. They integrated a lot of feedback from the community. And our goal with kind of digging into the updated plans is to write another comment letter to the Mass DOT team on this latest round of designs. Just so we have a timeline in our head, do you think there's like a best point at which to have a letter ready for the project team?
I think before summer,
Okay.
probably a couple months.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sweet. All right, I will kick it to Justin.
All right. So there was a public information meeting a couple weeks ago on McGrath Boulevard. On the agenda, I've got a link to the main project page. I'm not going to do too much of like overview and history because there's a ton. You can go there and there's a project fact sheet. There's a little bit. The slide deck is a lot more about how the project got here. But the image on the right is the project area. They've separated it into the southern segment, so sort of from the Target to Cambridge, the central section from there north to Highland Ave, where the green line passes underneath, and then the northern section from there up to Broadway. The central is really the core project, right? That's the viaduct that goes over Washington. That's really the main goal of the project, removing that viaduct. So the purpose, they had a public information meeting about a year ago. They presented what they call the concept design, and then again they presented now specific updates, sort of in specific intersection areas. So we're not quite at the 25% milestone, which is when things get a lot more real, so to speak, but they're continuing to have public meetings to keep people informed. And then, they covered, and what I'll cover tonight is McGrath at Somerville Ave / Medford Street, McGrath at Washington, McGrath at Highland, and McGrath at Otis Street with the pedestrian bridges. So, and then the intersection's still under refinement. McGrath at Rufo Road, Prospect Hill Ave, apologies, I repeated that twice, that should say Pearl Street, the second one there, and then McGrath at Broadway. They've previously shown the whole corridor in concepts, but they sort of framed it as we're still working on the next version of those intersections. They also responded to a number of questions about specific design elements that there's been advocacy around. For raised crosswalks, what they said is they're limited to using it on side streets. There's been a push to have this at the at-grade crossings that are not at synchronized intersections, like the one at Cross Street. And so far they're saying that they're not able to do that, although city and and community is still continuing to push for that. A lot of people wrote in about the frontage roads, like Dana Street was just off at the very right of the image. They're also proposing a new one on the block between Washington and Somerville Ave, heading south, sort of between Washington Street and the Target, where there's the overpass, there's a frontage road today, and they're keeping a sort of local street there. And their response has generally been that they don't want people coming out of their driveways onto McGrath itself. And there's sort of local access to the smaller homes and businesses there. And they also responded about medians. I think there was a push to reduce or eliminate the median along some or all from various folks. And the response has generally been the median is really necessary to keep people, we don't want people taking left turns onto and off of McGrath. And there may be some flexibility about how wide it is and what locations, but at the intersections, they're also using it as a pedestrian refuge. Not that you would cross half at a time, and they clear that when they give a walk signal, you're going to be able to cross the whole street, or that people cross at other times and they don't want to strand people in the middle of the intersection if they're crossing at the end of the light signal. So there's that piece as well. So yeah, I'm going to go right into the 4 intersections, but it's not me at any time. I'm just really going to cover like what has changed. But if you have questions about what you're seeing or want to raise something else up, just please interrupt me. So this is McGrath at Somerville Ave, Bedford Street. The major thing is that first call out on the top left, the slip road from Somerville to Medford removed. So previously there was a roadway here connecting Somerville Ave to Medford Street. They thankfully have determined that is not needed, and they're going to handle that move on Somerville Ave. I mean, so they're on McGrath Highway itself. If folks have been around for a while, they might remember the Union Square neighborhood plan proposed like a milk square here. This basically frames up, what was proposed back then, teeing off Medford and Somerville Ave into McGrath, and then having a green space here. That plan actually did have roads on all 4 sides of a very rectangular space, but I think we're very pleased that we've removed that extra space. One of the trade-offs is you'll see there is a 6-lane cross section there in that very short center block, because they're trying to accommodate a lot of people trying to get onto Medford, both from Somerville Ave and from McGrath itself. They also removed another lane northbound from McGrath onto Medford. That's not a move that exists today, so they don't plan to implement that. And then they reduced the width of Poplar Street to match the city's street plans. Yeah.
When we say functional green space,
Yeah.
does that mean like it's going to be an activated space, or it's just going to be grass with trees?
Yeah, I think all that is still to be determined. If you look at the Union Square plan, it's actually like a plaza. It's like Washington Square Park with a big arch, in the middle. And that's TBD. I would not expect the state to build us a civic space, but I think they will help facilitate, ultimately developing that into some sort of space. So I think putting down grass is probably what we could expect it to do otherwise.
That's the parking lot for the Target there, isn't it?
That's correct. Yeah.
And so they have stop signs going on to Medford Street and Somerville Avenue. Is that correct? When you're coming in and out of the parking lot, just a stop sign or something?
I believe so. Today or in this plan?
Oh, today. Yeah, I'm just trying to see if think about how that would work.
Yeah, they are eliminating the exit that exists onto Medford Street today. And I believe the other one onto Somerville Ave has a stop sign.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so we're now moving 1 block north McGrath Boulevard at Washington. Also some reallocation of space. They've widened they've reduced the lane lifts and widened the sidewalk and landscaping zone on this side of the street. On Washington in both directions, they removed a lane to narrow this roadway a bit. And then they are keeping, this median is actually quite wide, about 22 feet. The MBTA has an interest in taking a left onto Washington Street. So we're still figuring out what that means exactly, but that's preserving space to serve future bus routes. The bus network redesign has the 85 bus taking a left onto Washington Street. And you can see this sort of tan color, that's the frontage road I was referring to. The light gray is two-way bike facilities on both sides of the street. And then there is actually a two-way bike connection here up to the community path as well. They've got bus lanes mostly heading westbound. So it's really much more compact than previously. Still looks pretty big, but it's a lot smaller than the last version.
Justin, in your opinion, what is the appropriate width of a median to safely accommodate a pedestrian as a refuge?
I think it's a tough question because in Somerville, usually we're dealing with what's the minimum because we have very little space, and like our minimum is usually around 6 feet. So you can have two tactile warning panels and 2 feet between, so you can tell when you're off one and onto the next. The ones they're showing at other intersections are around 10. It's nice to have more space for people with strollers, kids, dogs. You have the space. I think that's a nice way. This is double that, but that's mainly to accommodate potentially a left turn.
Right.
How small would it be if the left turn lane is put in for the bus?
I think it would be around 10. Okay. I think they're shooting for 8 to 10 in general to support trees as much as possible. And there are some areas where it goes down maybe to 4 or 5. Probably 3 or 4 feet at least for like light poles and things like that. Okay. Moving north, another big block here. So we've skipped over Cross Street, Prospect Ave, because we don't have a design update there. This is intersection with Highland Medford. Again, they've removed lanes, McGrath northbound from 4 to 3. Not a double left turn, a single left turn. And then therefore on the receiving side, there's only a single lane. And then again, going out of Highland Medford, there's no double right, single right. So the Highland Medford is actually 2 lanes smaller. McGrath is 1 lane smaller. And then this is a somewhat confusing note to say that they think they could put Flexmos on the bridge. I think they're using evaluating because they're looking at other options too. It's very hard to put something structural on an existing bridge, but it sounds like they've at least are going to be putting Flexmos to separate the bike facility there. They've also trimmed up Highland and Medford. There's no sort of teeing off Medford into Highland Ave. Little mini plaza here. A lot less roadway, a lot more sidewalk space. And tying into a future, Highland Ave with bike lanes in both directions.
In this case, do they have authority all the way over there? Or are they going inside cities authority of this?
This intersection is Somerville right away.
So do we agree with that? Like are they telling us what to do, or?
I think they're taking their cues from what we envision for the future of Highland Ave. And if they're building it, it would be built to their standards, even if it's ultimately the cities right away would be responsible for making it.
But they're going to build all the way up there. They're not gonna wait for the city to do another.
That's what they're showing now. I mean,
Okay.
it's a very, very big project area, and I don't think every dollar is in security, but so far that they're showing, including that intersection. At the meeting, there were questions around, there's like a $38 million federal grant, and there's questions around if that goes away. They floated the idea that things might have to be done in phases, and that taking down the line of that's the core thing that they need to accomplish. But yeah, this is in their plan as of now. All right, this last one we might spend a little more time on. So this is the existing pedestrian bridge. So what you're looking at is the sort of magenta purple outline. That's the existing bridge today. And at the meeting, MassDOT made a pretty strong case for why they are proposing removing it and replacing this with an at-grade crossing. The blue is, their estimation of what it would take to make the existing bridge ADA compliant. It's not ADA compliant now, it's too steep. So you need a lot more ramp space. This is part of the playground right now, so it would eat into the existing playground footprint. And it would also eat into the sort of passive green space across the street, which this parcel outline, that's a state real estate parcel. The city owns the playground itself. This half of it is this city on MassDOT right away. So they're trying to show you like a lot more ramps are needed, and then they sort of underline that with a rendering. Right, so it's a fairly large structure.
But this amount of ramps would still be cheaper than elevators, I assume. Or was that discussed?
I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't think that was discussed. With elevators, one of the big challenges is who's going to maintain it. And also, like, if you have one elevator, you need two. For one, the one is undergoing maintenance. So we would probably be 4 elevators required. A lot of right turns also. I mean, this is basically a bridge the same width of the existing one. This is not a bikeable structure, obviously, but it definitely would be ADA compliant. And they're highlighting the reduced playground space as well. And after that, they presented, what they are proposing, which is an at-grade crossing, a fully signalized intersection, and they were clear that that's a red, yellow, green light, not a pedestrian hybrid beacon. They're showing the tie-in with our existing neighborway on Otis Street, and then they're envisioning, right, that you could use the space to expand the playground, and then also there's opportunity to create, new green space over here. It is a green space, but there's no real facilities there or pathways or anything like that. It's just passive green space.
Just in the meeting,
Yeah.
I think I remember them saying that they were limited in their ability to put in vertical speed calming interventions because of I think federal grant guidelines. I was wondering if you could expand on that.
I'm not sure specifically what they're citing, but it's a federally funded project, there are more rules around design and following federal standards like AASHTO, the guidebook. Yes, in the presentation, it's written in the presentation that's one of the reasons they can't do response ones. Right. Yeah, I don't know specifically what they're saying. Maybe a question to ask. And then, again, they're underlining their point a little bit. That they show a rendering of the at-grade crossing. Can't vouch for any tree growth that may or may not be shown here, but I think they've made a strong case. They're pressing their case that this is the better plan than replacing the bridge, or trying to maintain it in its existing form. And highlighting the fact it's a fully signalized intersection, right? All lots of street, human scale elements versus highway elements.
Does fully signalized mean that there's a signal like on the median too, in case you get stuck there?
Well, there would be one visible from the median. I don't know if, yeah, they are showing one on the median.
Oh, okay.
Fully signalized means just like red, yellow, green.
Oh, it doesn't mean like,
And that it's an issue here because there's been pushback to like the pedestrian hybrid beacon, which is the signal that's dark and that flashes yellow and then turns red.
that's very confusing.
We have a couple on Beacon Street,
Yeah,
and there's concern that it's not respected, and if it's dark 50% of the time when you're driving, you get used to not realize that you have to stop there. They're also, Otis is signalized too, the cross street coming out on one side, so they will get a green light to just take a right onto McGrath. And it also crosses Dana Street behind, I believe that's just that's on a stop sign. It's not a part of the signal system. It's a typical crosswalk. All right.
Great. Thank you so much, Justin. Super helpful. So I'm just curious, kind of folks' reactions to these updated plans. I'm just going to list a few things where I think we could integrate them into our letter, stuff that we've talked about previously, mostly just as a reminder for folks. But I think we could talk about the median, whether we feel like the current, the width varies in the current designs, as Justin noted, but mostly, you're good. But mostly it's 10 feet in width. We could talk about whether that feels appropriate to us, whether we still want to, try to make it not be there. I personally feel like they've made a good case for why it should be there, but we can talk about that. One thing that we have not talked about previously in our letter, but that came up at the meeting, is that they are planning on both creating new bus stops and improving existing bus stops. So we could advocate for like what kind of amenities we would want to see at those bus stops. I did ask a question in the meeting that whether they were going to put in amenities, and they were like, yeah, probably, if you advocate for that. We were like, great. So we should do that. Another comment came up at the meeting that I thought was interesting, where we could maybe advocate for the vehicle lanes to be narrowed from 11 feet to 10 feet to further encourage safe speeds. And then I think it would be great to talk about the footbridge and the crossing at Otis Street, since that was something that we advocated around. Previously, we had said that our ideal state would be to have a very safe at-grade crossing that does not require the bridge, but that we would want to see the bridge stay up throughout all of construction. So I think we should talk about what their new designs look like around there. And those are all the things that I was thinking about in terms of these updated designs. But curious if folks have thoughts on any of those things, but also just on the designs as a whole.
On the Otis Street Bridge, the plans that they're presenting are pretty close to the ideal in my mind, like what we could even like a stretch for. The only thing would be, to me, is if they did narrow the lanes approaching that area, that would be a nice signal to drivers to slow down and not be speeding through. Because even if the signals are well done, if cars are racing through the area when they have a green light, it's still going to feel unpleasant and unsafe to the people that are waiting at an area that's going to be a major crossing. Also, I'm really excited for the reduction at Medford, because that left is always a nightmare.
If we were looking to narrow those lanes, I'd also argue for doing that at Pearl Street as well. Having walked my daughter through that area, going down to to the Otis Street Bridge was sort of out of the way for a lot of folks who were walking kids to school and were crossing it at Pearl Street. Luckily we had a crossing guard, but
Do we have like a desirable speed limit for the area? Because then we can work backwards to see what kind of features do we need to sustain that speed, or to at least indicate that's the right speed.
My understanding, and Justin and Kate can correct me if I'm wrong, but the project team has not given a desired speed limit at this time. I think we could advocate for one.
Yeah, along the same lines, it's almost like if you're near a park, there should be like the school zone. I know it's not a school, but obviously there's going to be a lot of kids and families there and a lot of pedestrians that maybe across the city we'd want a slower speed limit by large parks.
Is this a road type of space where the city can do that type of speed limit reduction? Be like, oh, no, it's 20, making it a safety zone.
Not on the graph itself.
Okay, so that's
the
the
standard way.
Okay.
But the state could do that.
The state could change the speed limit, you know, they have rules around doing that, but, yeah, and, you know, the speed they're designing towards. They have a design speed for the project. We're pushing for it to be 25 miles an hour.
yeah, I would definitely argue that one of the stated goals is to knit the McGrath back into the community. And if the city has declared 25 is the city speed limit for the community, then I have trouble seeing how they could justify a faster speed if they're saying part of their idea is to knit this road back into the community. But the common speed, it seems like a reasonable thing to bring up if you ask me.
It does feel like the design, though, lends itself to wide, straight roads that are going to encourage way more than that.
What if the stoplight went red more often than normal? You know what I mean? It just, cars had to sit a little bit on a more frequent basis when they were going through that area. Is that an option?
Certainly something to push for. I mean, this was brought up previously by folks as setting it on recall so it comes up regularly, whether that's could be during certain hours of the day. You know, we have our signals in Somerville, most of them are recalled 24/7. Yeah, get folks used to the fact that they will turn red. And not having to push a button during busy times.
On that topic, I do think sometimes it's nice to discourage people from jaywalking if it is a rapid response. So like if it hasn't gone in a certain amount of time, if it's like late at night and it's slower, there's fewer pedestrians or bikers coming through. I can see a lot of people, if they push and it doesn't respond and they don't see a car, they're gonna go, which is kind of, in my mind, one of the biggest problems with the hawk signalization. So it'd almost be good here if there are no cars from whatever cameras that they're planning on putting in, and somebody pushes the button, that it starts changing right away. Because they're saying they're trying to do camera-based systems for all the intersections. They probably can do something that's more responsive than just a cycle.
Does anybody have opinions on the median question?
Oh, this is Ted. I think one of the issues we had talked about was potentially leaving more space for a future bus lane. It sounds like that's kind of off the table in this design. I don't know that we can change the direction of things in that sense. I don't know, I mean, is there any update on whether the MBTA is involved or like it's open to having a bus on McGrath at some point?
There's no plans for like a north-south service, right? There may be some buses that use McGrath to get from or Highland, but they don't. Right now, there's no real north-south service. But we have asked to make sure MassDOT reserve spaces for the intersections, where there's going to be medians anyway for pedestrian crossings.
Yes, I mean, that to my mind was the big argument for taking out the median. So I think, I mean, this design looks very good, so it's okay.
But we can always ask for specific bus lines. Because I do think in this case, like, you know, they are waiting to hear some feedback from the community, and maybe the feedback is, let's put a bus lane right now, as opposed to let's wait 10 years, finish this project first, and then we can try to do that.
Yeah, so I mean, are you thinking of specific, like something for, I guess, like the 88, coming off of Highlands, shorter bus time? I mean, maybe we can look at
The easiest one is just to shift that bus from Cross Street into McGrath, right? But maybe we should ask for more, like even with our nearby cities, help and try to connect them all, kind of thing. See if we can drive some of that discussion.
We're just pulling up our last comment letter on McGrath to see which lines we cited for bus service. We said the 85 and the 90 would be ideal candidates to shift from Cross Street to the northern portion of McGrath, which I think is already happening with the 90, right?
The 90 is shifting to they are shifting to Washington.
Washington Street. And then we also mentioned the 100 and the 108, which could use McGrath to connect Malden with the Green Line extension. And the T47 could be extended to use McGrath to connect Longwood and Cambridge to Assembly and Malden. So essentially what we said is you should extend some of the bus lines in the bus network redesign and take advantage of McGrath in doing so.
There's also the 85 issue on Cross Street. That's not because of another one there. I mean, it'd be a challenge to use Cross Street in the future if we're moving to 90. 85 would be difficult.
So, I mean, we could push for that again if folks wanted to.
I think it could be interesting with what they said that they could add the facilities for bus lanes and so on. We could push even further, like if you're gonna do design, you know, 4 buses, let's at least think, you know, what kind of buses will go there, bring the MBTA in, and figure something out that would just prepare the lane for, you know, for something in the near future.
Just to clarify, Peter, are you saying add a lane?
No.
Okay.
But like, where would the bus go? In the middle lane or the side lane? Like, what are the facilities that are going to be included? Are they going to do this right now or later? What comes first, kind of thing? Because then it forces them to think, forces them to have the conversation.
I guess along those lines that we could include maybe that's an easier, might be an easier ask is some kind of transit signal priority on some of the intersections, thinking like the 87 passing through the intersection by Target might be a good candidate for that.
And then just returning to this question of bus stop amenities. What would people like? I imagine some sort of shelter and a bench, at least.
At least.
Are there other
Some
things?
wind protection.
Are there other things that people would like?
It's always nice to have spots for recycling and trash.
I kind of like the idea of it having, in the design, having some sort of solar power so that you could do a e-ink countdown or, updates. So that doesn't have to be, even if they don't do it immediately, as those things become cheaper, it doesn't have to be a big retrofit. So, if they're going to build a shelter, have it so that it can be wired, even if they don't wire it right up front.
Should we ask for like an elevator platform for wheelchair folks
Where?
as the bus stop? Some bus stops are just like the elevator way, and they can just build it up to the level of the bus.
Is that, I mean, I'm assuming that's possible.
Possible. But yeah, like, for example, that Columbus Ave busway.
Right.
Yeah.
Those platforms are elevated. I mean, the buses can go down, but they don't need to.
And they are better, right?
I mean, it's generally, it's associated with like bus rapid transit and
Yeah.
things like that.
Were you gonna say something, Preston?
Yeah, I was still thinking on it, but has the city ever done any sort of like emergency call boxes or help boxes that aren't just the fire pulse? I was curious if like that might be not necessarily like an emergency thing, but at bus stops, sometimes people do need some sort of help or assistance.
I think the community map has, I don't know if it's like intercom or, I don't know if it's a phone, but I think it's a button. It's just a call, but I'm not 100% sure.
There's also a new system, I think it's Summer and Central, when they're doing spring hill work. I passed it many times and I don't think it's a pole, but I don't know what it is. It's a different looking.
And Tufts, I'm sure Tufts University has one of those.
Yeah, I just haven't looked closely, but that seems like if you're putting a lot of other amenities in a bus stop area or a high traffic area, like some of the crosses at Pearl Street or Otis, it could be nice for just.
It's certainly something that, most college campuses have done that blue light system over the whole campus. So it doesn't have to be that dense, but it would be nice to have that as an option. Heck, I wouldn't mind having, USB chargers.
Yeah.
Particularly if you make the roof on a shelter be solar panels. Why not charge your phone?
Love it.
I've seen some benches that have like integrated chargers with the solar, so there's just a battery that's constantly charging.
Should we also ask for like city bike facilities around bus stops?
Having a city bike or blue bike.
I think,
spot
yeah,
would
it
be-
makes sense, right?
At least, planning an area, not that they would be responsible for that, but I imagine that the city hopes to eventually add more stations. Especially if people can safely bike on the graph.
It would be nice, if they're doing a floating bus stop to make have a designated spot that won't get in the way of the bus doors, but they also don't have to put it in at street level and worry about plows or something.
As we wrap up this discussion, can I just get like a general read on folks' thoughts on these updated designs? Ted, I know that you said they looked pretty good. I also think they look pretty good. Is anybody like, I don't want these to happen, or like, I think there's way more that needs to happen for me to feel like happy with these designs? Or do you think that they're like pretty much on track with what you hope for this corridor?
I know there's been a lot of improvement, but I really find it hard to get enthusiastic about the places where it's like it's still 6 lanes and they're calling it a city street, like that's still a highway. Like it's definitely getting better, but like I don't know.
That's helpful, Laura, thank you.
On that point, I also feel like that the median, if they really wanted to and wanted to prevent left turns, you can just put a Jersey barrier or a wall. You don't need to have that median space. If they really did want to shift things to one side of the right of way, you could really create more space on one side or the other. And there might be something about utilities in there, that there's utility boxes underneath or something, but I do feel like there really could be more space recovered from the road. That I feel like they're still sort of intent on using the entire right of way for travel one way or another. Whereas I kind of wish that we could have some of the right of way back for city. There was some interesting talk at the meeting about somebody who had gone back and seen the old fire insurance maps way back when I used to research fire insurance maps for a job, and had seen what the street grid looked like before McGrath came through. And it would just be, it's not that it's actually going to do anything, but it would be interesting to almost see an overlay of what the old grid looked like and how much residential space or public space or whatever was lost to the road versus how much they're offering to give back.
Someone did email me. There's this anonymous person who likes to email me about PTAC things, which is great. They're always great emails. But this person did make some maps, like overlaying McGrath onto like previous homes. But I can send it to the committee. Anything else? Okay, awesome. Super good discussion. Thank you all for your thoughts. I think we have a lot of good content to draft into a letter. I am happy to take a first stab at a letter unless anybody else is raring to do so. I would happily give up my hold on the letter writing. But seeing none, I will do so. So I'll plan to have that for your review in advance of the May meeting. We can dig into it at the May meeting. If we feel comfortable voting to send it at the May meeting, then we can do so shortly thereafter. I did get an email from the Gilman Square Neighborhood Council. They're interested, they're talking about McGrath tonight as well. They're interested in sharing their thoughts with us for our consideration to integrate into the letter as well. So I can send everybody their feedback on our listserv. Just take a look and see if you agree with their thoughts as well. And we can get something drafted. All right, moving on to our next agenda item, which is also a letter opportunity. So I'm just gonna quick summarize this project. Mass DOT, a different project team, is planning on replacing the bridge that currently goes over the Green Line tracks, or I guess they're not Green Line tracks yet, they're just train tracks, on Webster Ave. They're going to replace that bridge because it's deteriorating, and they're also going to replace the currently skewed intersections at Newton Street with 2 teed off intersections, and they'll also add some bike infrastructure, which we can look at on the next slide. The project is already at 75% design, so it's pretty far along. And construction is set to begin this winter, if all goes according to plan. There is some community concern over whether the bridge is gonna be reconstructed to accommodate a future Green Line extension. So, make sure that the train can actually fit under the bridge. And the concern is just coming from some ambiguity and uncertainty around answers in the public meeting. The answers that I reviewed said that the current right-of-way is gonna be tightened, was the language that they used, but not further than the clearances that are under the Prospect Street Bridge, which you can see is just to the east, past the Webster Ave Bridge. And the project team has also said that they have MBT sign off on this project. So I think actually, Justin, can you go to the next slide before I summarize? Okay, yes. So this is just what the proposed intersection would look like in their design. So you can see both segments of Newton Street, or both approaches of Newton Street being teed off. The green on Webster Ave are bike lanes. There's a crossing as well that I think, does that exist today, or is that being created?
That exists.
Okay. So yeah, that's what it would look like. So the question, I guess, for the committee is, do we want to just send a letter saying, hello, will you please make sure that the Green Line can go under this bridge? It would be very sad if it couldn't. I think that there's not a high likelihood that the design will change immensely because it's already at 75% design, and it also seems I'm not sure if it is necessary for us to tell them to maintain that space under the bridge. But I think if we wanted to cover all our bases and make sure that we are on the record saying please make sure to maintain this access and clearance for the train, then we could do so and just make sure, better safe than sorry, basically, would be the approach. So curious if anybody has thoughts on this project, or whether we want to do a little, it would be a small letter, 2 paragraphs probably.
Sandra, yes, has his hand raised.
Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
Yeah. I think it's certainly not harmful, right, to chime in around the Green Line right of way and the sort of making sure there's preserved room for that. I feel like the answers that I saw too on some email lists are a little vague around it's tightened, we have MBT approval, but is there actually room or not? I'm not sure that's been clearly answered, right?
Yeah.
I also think, just as a side note, I've seen a few people complain that, how did this get a 75% design? I don't remember public meetings, do you? And I just feel like maybe there weren't as many advertised public meetings for early feedback on this design, and this could be a time to kind of raise that concern for future projects.
That's a good point, definitely. I am actually, on that point, just curious, did anybody know about this project before 75% design? No. Okay.
I saw 2 weeks ago for the first time. Yeah. And I live off the street, so.
Was the city and mobility pulled in on this earlier and it didn't trickle down to us, or?
We have not had a ton of involvement with this project. We were aware of it earlier. It has had a project page, a mascot. There's a very technical bridge or project page. It's been up for a while. There's no real the McGrath Boulevard nice project page. I don't believe there was a 25%. I think this is the first hearing. Yeah, we definitely have less involvement, and our focus is definitely making sure it's consistent with the Union Square phase 1.
The concern I have isn't limited to just the Green Line, but maintaining that right of way as much as possible for commuter rail improvements long term. Because the service through that area from Porter to North Station is horribly slow. There's a lot of opportunity that, they might need to eventually be redoing some of those tracks or whatnot. or the right-of-way can be used in some other capacity. But if the bridge is already done, that will be a major hurdle.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think the city wants to make sure we have capacity for high capacity transit here. There's no green line extension here in the MBTA's capital vision anywhere, but there is the regional rail concept, which is sort of taking the big locomotives and having them be electric, smaller, and operate more like, you know, something approaching what the green line does. Yeah, so I think we're a little agnostic into what form it takes. You know, what we did with the other green line extension and adding another step tracks, that's one way to approach it. It's not the only way.
Well, on the state's project, on the state's page online, this project only had one public hearing. It was in March this year, 2025. And it started, well, the first design was in 2023, December. So it's not that old, but there is nothing on the website that they actually talked to anybody besides this first meeting that we got to see.
Thank you for checking that. So I'm hearing that the committee is enthusiastic about writing a letter that comments on assuring that there is enough clearance for the green line to be extended, as well as optimizations to the commuter rail, and just asking why they didn't engage with us sooner on this project, which sounds great. Should we plan? I'm also happy to draft this letter because it's going to be pretty short, I think. Does the committee want it to be brought back to the May meeting, or do you feel comfortable just having it sent, since it's going to be probably much simpler than the McGrath letter? I'm happy with either option, just curious what the committee would prefer.
I feel like those were really the only 2 points, so I'd be happy just to send the letter rather than having to review it again. You know, just making sure that there's actually room for additional track and kind of asking why no one ever saw this before, like a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I agree.
I do have one other question. It shows contraflow bike lane. Are there plans for Webster to have one on the other side? Is that I don't really understand how that would work.
On Webster Ave.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are showing the city's preference for tying into the Prospect Webster area intersection.
Okay.
That is not what you'll see in Tool's 25% design for Union Square, but that is a change that we're hoping to make, and it's a little awkward that cross up there. I think the intent would be eventually that we're all down the square. One of the issues with what is shown in the Union Square streetscape is to fit like facilities in both directions. The silos are quite narrower than they are. They're maintaining trees and everything, and the result of that is, particularly where there are trees, it's a narrower walkway today. I think there's some discomfort there.
It's already pretty narrow.
It's already been.
Sorry, are you saying that having the two-way bike lane on one side makes that space?
We can
makes
fit
more
it within
possible?
the existing curve.
Okay.
Basically, yeah. And you know, we're trying to future-proof this because it's not clear if this will be done. If Union Square Phase 1 is moving forward, or if that's coming later. It's a very challenging thing to figure out, but we're trying to make sure they're not precluding anything that they designed what we ultimately want to see on the street.
Would you still like to include anything about the bike lanes in the letter though, Preston?
No, I'm just curious on how that terminates if you're heading westbound on Webster or southbound. disoriented looking at that.
So are the sidewalks staying the same width that they are now, or are they gonna be, cause like I take the bus from that intersection a lot, and like so many people are walking by with like kids and strollers and stuff, and like if I'm standing on the sidewalk and people trying to get by, like it's already quite narrow.
Yeah. It's essentially the same width, I believe, as it is today. They're not proposing widening the bridge, and Webster off the bridge, I mean, that's the width of the street in total. There's really no extra space. You know, they're just sort of showing green triangles here, like they're at those locations, there's potential to do something else. Yeah, and you know, the teeing off goes into some private property on the other side, so there's maybe some flexibility there, but Webster's very narrow, and they're not, I don't believe they're proposing it to be any wider here.
Is it worth mentioning that we would like them to just widen the bridge at this stage?
Well, widening the bridge wouldn't widen
Or
the rest
widen
of
the
the
sidewalk, yes.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing, there is this structure at the bottom there. If they're gonna move that, they could widen. If they're not moving, then it's virtually impossible. Because they talk about, you know, design is for the road. I'm interested, like, okay, the utility thing that is going below it, is that gonna move or not? Are they gonna rebuild it or not? Because if that gets some work, then you can decide to just widen the sidewalk.
Yeah, I think it's a utility bridge. Is what it is. I don't know if that is a new location. It looks the same. And there's nothing wrong for advocating for wider. I mean, that does increase this cost of the bridge and redesign, but I mean, I imagine that they would be resistant to that, but it doesn't mean we should push for that. There's also that like the teeing off of Newton on the north side for Concord. Awesome. I'm not quite clear on the green triangle and then the gray triangle. I mean, there's a lot of questions here.
It could be interesting to add some of your comments there, like how many people use it and what type of users this bridge has, because they might not know. They just might not have no idea.
Like I was saying, like a lot of people walk down the street to get to the school, so there's like the cargo bikes and people with strollers and little kids and so like, I don't know, I just feel like with having like the narrow sidewalks, it sometimes makes it difficult. Like if I have my backpack on going to work, I have to like move so people
Oh, wow.
me and so.
So, I mean, I think I'm hearing that we could advocate for them widening the sidewalks in this design. Anything else? Does anybody want to review it in our May meeting, the letter? Okay, then I motion to write the letter based on these 3 points, ensuring GLX clearance, voicing our consternation that they did not hold more public hearings, and widening the sidewalks. I motion to write that letter and send it between now and the next meeting. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, great. Thank you all. We're gonna have a lot of letters, yay. Okay, our last agenda item is on the traffic signal phasing. That's part of the Elm Beacon Connector project, which we dug into. The project we dug into at our last meeting, but we didn't get to really talk about the signal phasing. And so thanks to Ted for advocating that we dig into it at this meeting. Are you taking this with you? I am. Cool.
So I think we're all quite familiar with the overview. We talked about that a little bit more last time. But the higher level is protected bike lanes on both sides of Elm, between Russell Street and Somerville Ave, between Acadia Park, the city line and Somerville Ave. Oh no, and Elm Street, and then Beacon Street, that little section that wasn't finished before. We also are looking to make Mossland a new way by deadening the northern section. And Ted, to answer your question from last minute, why the northern section versus the southern part, that connects to Ave, the northern part is actually slightly wider. So last minute I didn't have like the full thing. It allows you to do the cul-de-sac and have a turnaround spot, which the section by Somerville Ave does not. And then as well as there was some impacts to signal timing. But I double checked that after because I really want to make sure to have the answer. But share it to the wider group. But I'll dig into the signal facing because that's what we didn't talk as much about last time. I'm just going to walk through the 3 major intersections. So if this is too long, just let me know, but I'm just going to walk through the faces. So on the whole, there's minimal changes at Elm and Cedar and Mossland. There are minimal changes expected to be needed to signal time phasing here, since the overall volume on each leg of the intersection is unlikely to change significantly. So during the first phase, eastbound and westbound Elm Street bikes and vehicles will get the green. Pedestrians will also have the walk sign to cross Cedar and Mossland. You'll notice that Mossland actually stays on the whole time. In the second phase, the walk sign will come on for all crosswalks at the intersection. People on bikes will also be permitted to proceed through the intersection after yielding to pedestrians. And during this third phase, southbound bikes and vehicles will get the green. Right turning drivers must yield to cyclists before making the turn. And pedestrians will also have the walk sign to cross Cedar and Mossland. So any cyclists proceeding onto Mossland Street must yield to any pedestrians in the crosswalk. So in terms of signal phasing here, it works similar as it does today, as I described. Elm Street gets the green, then there's an exclusive pedestrian all walk, and then Cedar gets the green. The biggest benefit will be for pedestrians using the crosswalk across Mossland Street and cyclists traveling eastbound on Elm Street will be able to proceed through the intersection unimpeded, since cars will no longer be able to access Mossland Street from the intersection. Based on the traffic counts, which are in that larger deck that we provided last time, but they're also on the project website if you're interested. We'll also be able to reduce the overall cycle length of the signal from 90 seconds, what it currently is, to 70 seconds. And this should still provide enough time for any cars waiting at the light to get through on the next green, but will allow for shorter wait time for pedestrians and cyclists to get through the intersection. Are there any questions about that one before I move on to the next?
For the second phase, is that going to be shown with signs that say cyclists may proceed with pedestrian signal, or is there like a bike light or
So we are anticipating bike signals at most of these locations. I think we'll also have to include signage because with the Mossland Street won't be on all the time, but bikes can go through. We still will have to have some kind, but I think we're still digging into that.
Okay, yeah, I'm just thinking, so like if it's actually red for cyclists in phase 2, but there's a sign that says that they can go on the red. I mean, I can see that working in some way, but I can also see it being confusing.
Yeah, so clarifying the signage.
I think that if it's green, if there's a green bike light and a walk sign at the same time in all directions, then I think cyclists will interpret that as just like go full speed.
Yeah.
And that would be a problem. So yeah, I just wanted to raise that.
I'm curious on the Mossland crosswalk signalization for the pedestrians.
Yeah.
I don't know if it makes sense, but is it been considered about removing the signs? There's not a walk sign. People just treat it as a regular crosswalk.
Yeah, we're definitely thinking about that because it's like, why would you just do the pit signal on at all time? And then is that helpful? Is it not?
I don't know. I'm just a part of my brain is like, if I see a walk sign, I'm way less likely to do a good job checking if I'm stepping out right at the same time as somebody is coming by. Yes, they should yield, but that doesn't mean it's gonna always happen.
Yeah, so it's definitely being talked about, or we had similar feedback in the outreach as well. Like, what will this look like? It was more that as we were working through the signal timing, because you're dead ending it, you don't really have to stop pedestrians from crossing it at any time.
Are we expecting cyclists to go up Cedar? Because I know that the bike lane is just coming down, but most, people go the other way around as well.
Yeah, this time we know it does happen.
Yeah.
I think you'll call it salmoning when we were doing outreach, which is a new term, but I like to because, salmon go against the current. No, at this time we are not planning any bicycle facility changes on Cedar. And Cedar is designated for, I believe, one direction of protected bike lane in the bicycle network plan.
So I'm sorry, Kate, can you clarify on phase 3? If a bike wants to bike southbound from Cedar Street onto Mossland, it cannot do that on phase 3 because the pedestrians will have the signal, it can only turn left, correct?
No. So there's a dotted purple line. They can proceed forward,
great, sorry.
but they must yield.
Okay. I think I'm like a little concerned about that phasing because like if I'm a bike on Cedar Street and I am trying to like get out of the way of a car that's turning right onto Elm Street, then like I'm gonna try to get out of that car's way as soon as possible, which would make me less likely to be mindful of a pedestrian crossing. And so I could imagine some conflict where like a bike is trying to keep themselves safe, but in doing so, they're endangering a pedestrian.
And the car's not going to see that or think of it because the pedestrian's on a sidewalk. That's not their problem.
Right.
So versus, if it were actually, if they were thinking of going straight as well, they might be more likely to see that pedestrian.
Any other feedback or questions about that one? Or should I go on to the next signalizing section?
I think a more general question, like, are we going to sync the signals between the intersections?
This is a great question and also came up a lot in outreach.
Yeah.
Sorry to keep referring to that. We just wrapped up, so it's always fun to kind of like think of the trends. There could be opportunities. We don't really know until we dig into what are the possibilities with the signal equipment. I think we got the feedback that someone's like, just make it green for me the whole way. We're like, we don't know how to individually make it green for you. I just watched Adam have that discussion for 15 minutes.
Oh my
on the side of the street.
Because I know that Somerville Avenue is pretty bad for cars. When
Yes,
you
but
drive,
we're excited to talk to you
you
about
always
that
get the red
intersection
light
too.
all the way through.
Yeah. Yeah, one thing that I'll say, so in all of these, you'll notice there's still relatively short bike cycles, which, I know we've gone back and forth of what are the pros and cons. The pros are often just less wait time for all users, but our biggest concern has been the wait time for pedestrians as the city. And so we really try to think through how we move everyone effectively, but still really minimize that wait time. I know that doesn't address your concern about sort of lab congestion. But I think that we're trying to, in each of the opportunities, would it be helpful if I talk through Elm's or the lab?
Sure, but I think as in a general team, I think it's important to know if you're trying to sync them or not. If that opportunity is there or not. And then what's the plan? Are we optimizing for pedestrians, for cars, for bikes? What's the desired speed? Because there's a lot of questions there if you try to sync them. But if that's not an option, then why would we waste any time?
Yeah, I don't, just to address that, but I don't know if it is or isn't. It's something that we're really excited to dig into. We put this concept together and right now we're working to get a consultant on board to help us think through the more what would you call that, refined signal phasing plans?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have an actual signal plan yet, it's a conceptual diagram.
Yeah.
We have to investigate what equipment we have and all of that.
Yeah, what equipment we would need, and then procuring, getting all that on board. And then syncing, I would imagine there's pros and cons, right? And so I will say from the city's perspective, our main point is safety. We know that there's gonna be increased congestion at this intersection, or sorry, I shouldn't say increased volume. We don't believe there's gonna be increased congestion. And maybe, I can open the comment precedent.
I was just curious for the bike and pedestrian interactions there, if it was considered having the bike lane do some sort of jog to like be a little bit slower or going like right and then left. So rather than going through right along the right-hand side,
Yeah.
if they were entering more towards the middle where there'll already be some amount of space for one half of a fire truck at least. So, there'll already be a little bit of through space there that could potentially be used, so someone would cross, take a small left and then a right. That could be hard though for certain types of bikers, but would slow people down and still get them out of the car's path. Maybe, I don't know, just curious.
Oh, thanks for sharing that. Okay, so this next, I'm gonna walk through this signal facing proposal for Elm Street at Somerville Ave. This one has about 5 phases, so I'm gonna talk about each one. So our plan will change the setup of the traffic signals at this intersection in a way that's intended to give people walking, rolling, biking, and driving as much dedicated time and space to proceed as possible. Sorry, excuse me. During the first phase, westbound vehicles and bikes in both directions of Somerville Ave will have the green. Pedestrians will also have the walk sign to cross Elm Street. So any cyclist proceeding onto Elm Street must yield to pedestrians in the crosswalk. All right turns from Somerville Ave onto Elm Street will be required to use the slips lane. So they won't be taking that right directly where Elm Street and Somerville Ave meets, they would be in the slip lane. So pedestrian cyclists will not have to worry about cars turning right while they have a green or walk sign. So during the second phase, westbound vehicles and bikes will get the green on Somerville Ave. Right turns from Elm Street onto Somerville Ave will also be permitted. This phase can be shortened if there isn't much traffic heading eastbound. I just want to note that you'll see the right turn from Elm Street onto Somerville Ave is on a few of these phases, and a part of that is to also accommodate the increased volume because Mossland Street would be closed. So during the third phase, right turns from Elm Street onto Somerville Ave will get the green, or will still have the green. Pedestrians will also have the walk sign to cross Somerville Ave on the east side of the intersection, and cyclists heading east on Somerville Ave will be able to take a left onto Elm Street. So during the fourth phase, all traffic on Elm Street will have a green light. Cyclists heading eastbound on Somerville Ave will also be allowed to proceed. This phase can be shortened if there isn't much traffic on Elm Street. And starting during the fifth and final phase, the Elm Street right turn lane will go red, but left turns from Elm Street onto Somerville Ave will still have a green. The walk sign across Somerville Ave on the west side of the intersection will turn on, and cyclists heading southbound on Elm Street will be able to take a left onto Somerville Ave. So we're really hoping this plan to result in more predictability and everyone feeling safer. We're trying to reduce some of those conflicts. Justin is more familiar, you can always speak to this, but these are attempts to have kind of like protected concurrent.
Is there a particular reason why Somerville Ave eastbound can't go in phase 1?
Good question. I'm just kind of thinking that through really fast. And my apologies, I'm not the traffic engineer end of the project team.
That's fine.
But I'm trying to do my best.
The main reason is, so Kate just mentioned protecting. Like we've often debated exclusive phasing versus concurrent, where like everyone's going straight at the same time, you have to yield. If you'll notice, there's no conflicts with pedestrians and turning vehicles, so it's a flavor of concurrent called protected concurrent. There's really very few conflicts at all between any modes. And then because there's no left turn lane on eastbound Somerville Ave, we can't let them go because
that's what it is. Okay.
Yeah, because you would just hold it up.
And there's really no space for adding a left turn lane there. Like it's not a parking thing. There's just not enough space.
So instead of having somebody who wants to take a left, trying to and holding up the traffic, it's just a red light. Everybody's waiting.
And that,
so there's less frustration.
That's a thing, and that happens today. It's more that would conflict with the pedestrian crossing, and I think in a world where we're removing the exclusive, like we have an opportunity to have every crosswalk not have conflicts. So I think that's the bigger issue.
Right. I was just thinking only people going straight, not left in the first phase, but okay, I get it now.
Just because they'll just be still that one lane.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah. The cool thing is that for if there are some nervous drivers out there who hate taking lefts, you get now like a safe left in a vehicle.
And because, again, Mawson's closed, there's a lot of right turning traffic coming through. There's efficiency there because like we have to keep that right turn lane ongoing more anyway. And the left turns can be protected, like they're overlapping, like in phase 2. You can see the right turn lane is green for 65 seconds, up to 65 seconds.
And sorry, I forgot to note, all in all, this is a 120-second cycle. But you as a pedestrian aren't waiting and just for one segment of that because there's opportunities to cross depending on where you're going, right? But that 120-second, right, it's 2 minutes overall at this intersection.
So is that why because 4 goes back into 1, right? Or is that 5?
Yeah.
Wait, say that again.
5. So 5 goes back into 1. So the 2 pedestrian.
Oh yeah, there's just a
crosses,
typo. Sorry, it says phase 4 twice, but it's phase 5.
Yeah. So the 2 pedestrian crosses are connected, but the one in the middle is not connected time-wise to either of those. So the question is, can we swap phase 3 and 4? So the pedestrians, when they get to cross, they can cross in sequence if they want. And I'm thinking to reduce, if I'm crossing 2 roads at the same time, Somerville Avenue and Elm, in either direction, ideally I want to cross one and then get the ring signal to cross the other one, and almost as fast as possible.
Well, then wouldn't you swap 2 and 3?
Yeah, you could do this.
So which of the 2 crosses that you're?
So phase 1, you as a pedestrian, you can cross on Elm, right? Then phase 3, you can cross on Somerville in one side, and in phase 5 on Somerville on the other side. 5 and 1 are connected. So you could cross.
Say put the
Yeah.
put the
Put
3
one
movements next
So
to each other.
so
Yeah.
5 and 1 are next to each. Okay, and then you just have no heads for.
You're trying to say put them next to each other, so if you have to do 2 crossings, you're doing it closer together.
Right. You don't need to wait as much.
So either swap 2 and 3 or 3 and 4.
Right.
Well, but that would lengthen the amount of time, and then there'd be 2 phases next to each other with no pedestrian crossing.
Yeah.
That's way longer. Because I think with this intersection, I think they're mostly, like most of the movements I'm imagining at least, you have another way to cross a little bit later. Like if you're walking down from Porter Square, down Somerville Avenue toward Union Square, and you cross, like, if you cross in phase 3, well, anyway, like you could go down to like Lowell Street, for example, there's a right bit of pedestrian signal that you can push the button across there.
Well, actually, the way we think about this, now that I'm thinking, is that if you go to one intersection, ideally what you would like to see is, can I cross here or there, right? Like I have the option, I'm going either way. So I can do this or this. And if the phasing works so that when I get to each one of the intersections, I have that option, that would be beneficial. Sorry, I'm trying to optimize for the pedestrian.
I just want to flag there's one more signal plan. And we're,
Oh, okay.
yeah, I mean, one consideration is either of those swaps. It's a little awkward to have a light turn green and then turn red and turn green again.
Right.
But I mean, it's not wrong.
Yeah, and to your comments too, like where is someone trying to go? We really try to think through what paths are people taking and where are they trying to go. It's an interesting intersection. It's very wide, and what are your destinations? And do you cross earlier because you know you're heading?
It's also very fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's kind of no, I mean, there's like with the car wash there and stuff, there's no destination for a
Right.
while on that side for
Yeah.
pedestrians, and then, so it's kind of a different intersection.
Laura has her hand up.
Yes, Laura, go ahead.
Yeah, it sounds like that a lot of this is planned around the idea of reducing conflicts between the different modes, which I'm really in favor of. But it sort of sounds like part of that one of the ways we're doing that is by moving the right turning traffic onto the slip lane. And I feel like that just creates a lot of more, now that we're creating new conflict in a different intersection that isn't signalized. And so I'm just not sure I feel good about, because if you're walking along Somerville Ave, yeah, now you have this crossing a lot. You can cross Elm where there's no conflict, but then you're gonna still have to cross that slip line or that slip lane where there is no signal and cars are not paying good attention. So I am not sure I really understand that thought process.
I'm happy to speak to that, or how do you want to use the rest of the time?
I think answer that question because I also have that question selfishly. And then I think if folks need to go, they should feel free to. But I think we can maybe quickly go through the last intersection.
That sounds good. So thanks, Laura. Yeah, we went back and forth on this a lot, and there's also the impact to the bus. We ultimately proposed putting that, kind of trying to create more of a turn that when you approach the slip lane or the stop sign at the slip lane, you then have to move slightly to your left. With right now, it feels like you can just go forward, and there's like we heard it and we've seen it a lot, right? The low compliance of that stop sign. So if we have to push vehicles to have to pay attention, and then they have to turn right essentially when they're coming out of that slip lane, we hope this would encourage slower speeds as well as paying more attention to folks using that crossing. Our dream would be to be able to reconstruct this whole intersection, and these are kind of the limitations with quick build. We did find about 95% of the traffic does currently use the slip lane. We're also, we're happy to continue to hear feedback, and I know we talked about it last time, but if that feels much more strongly, I think you talked about that there's still consideration sending some feedback, although we took notes from last time, please do. Okay, should I do the last one?
Yes.
Okay. So this one combines two intersections, right? So if you're Mossland at Somerville Ave and you're Beacon at Somerville Ave, so you're really thinking these as all one. So during the first phase, the left turn from Somerville Ave onto Beacon and the right turn from Beacon for motor vehicles will both be green. Cyclists will also be able to turn from Somerville Ave heading westbound onto Beacon from Somerville and from Somerville Ave heading eastbound onto Mossland. So the crosswalks across Somerville Ave at Mawson Street and on the west side of Beacon Street will have the walk sign. Currently, these are exclusive, and we just heard a lot about red light running in this area, so we're trying to change up some of that to reduce that conflict. During the second phase, drivers proceeding straight along Somerville Ave in either direction will have the green. Drivers will also be permitted to turn onto Mawson Street or Adelaide Road after yielding to oncoming traffic. Cyclists and oncoming traffic, cyclists and pedestrians, and cyclists will also be able to proceed straight in either direction along Somerville Ave. And can also turn right onto Beacon, Mossland, or Adelaide after yielding to pedestrians. Pedestrians will have the walk sign for the crosswalk across Beacon. During the third phase, cyclists and drivers waiting at either Mossland Street or Adelaide Road will both get the green. Anyone taking a right out of Adelaide or left out of Mossland will have a red light on Somerville Ave until the start time of the next phase. We intend to install camera detection at these intersections, which will allow this phase to be skipped if there are no vehicles or bikes waiting to exit Mossland or Adelaide. During the fourth phase, drivers turning left from Beacon Street onto Somerville Ave or right from Somerville Ave onto Beacon Street will get a green. Traffic bound for Adelaide Road from Beacon Street will also be permitted to proceed to the intersection after yielding to cyclists. Cyclists will also will be able to proceed in any direction from Beacon Street and will also have a green on Somerville Ave heading eastbound, which is primarily intended to allow cyclists wishing to turn left onto Mossland Street to position themselves to proceed during the next phase. Pedestrians will have the walk sign across the crosswalk across Somerville Ave on the east side of Beacon and the crosswalk across Mossland Street. So we hope this plan to result in more predictability and everyone feeling safer, and we intend to keep this cycle length the same as it is today to ensure that pedestrians don't have to wait longer. And we also feel that people driving or biking will be able to move more quickly through these intersections than they do today without compromising on safety.
So is that my impression, or on phase 4, bikes are going, they're going around, right? They're gonna go close to the crosswalk first. That,
Yeah, instead
I
of taking
can't see
like
that happening in practice.
Yeah, we are hoping to create like more dedicated spots so that there's clearly where you can go as a bike. Is we will also have bike signals. But yeah, instead of traveling either with the vehicles or what we also see, right, a lot of bikes taking the left from Beacon onto Somerville Ave to either head to Porter Square. They're just going on the pedestrian phase on the exclusive head.
Right.
So this would be kind of, yeah, creating dedicated space, they will kind of take a right to cross, then take a left.
Or they just go straight.
Yes, which would be with the vehicles.
Yeah.
Which we heard a lot of people also have discomfort in doing this when we're doing outreach.
As a cyclist.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like so like, and again, this is just what we heard, that if you were waiting to take a left, you're feeling unsafe to move with the motor vehicles, right? So then you go on the exclusive head, which is feeling so much discomfort of taking that left with motor vehicles, even when you're like in that box, if it isn't been, clustered with vehicles.
Okay, well, in the interest of not keeping people here, far past dinner time, thank you all so much for being here. I saw you vigorously taking notes, Kate. Is that an appropriate way? Do you need anything more official from us?
No, whatever works best for you, but again, if there are additional thoughts, please let us know. Like, especially in this signal time, we are trying to get all that feedback as soon as possible, but we are still exploring what are the specific solutions, so please don't hesitate to reach out with additional thoughts.
All right, really productive meeting, everyone. Thank you so much. We'll see you in May. Bye, guys.
Thank you.